Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen, for Point of View. And certainly this campaign, this presidential campaign, and all the others are winding down. We're getting to the end. And last night was the third and final debate between the two front-runner presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And it's interesting to note that Hillary Clinton had a 10-point lead nationally in January in most of the polls. And we're at about that now. So, I guess the question that we'll ask a little bit later in the program is, did the debate make any difference? Now, this is a campaign in which, for the last few weeks, it seems like we've been discussing more, not here at Point of View, but sort of the nation as a whole, more about which candidate is or is married to one of the worst sex offenders. Last night, though, in this third and final debate between these two, we actually got some substance, and I thought a clear contrast. And with me to discuss this is Debbie Georgatos. And Debbie is a political consultant, attorney, author, and host of her own radio show, America Can We Talk, and a frequent co-host here on Point of View. I'm so glad you're in with me today, Debbie.
I'm so glad too, Penna. Thanks for having me.
Did you think, I was happy with the substance that started to emerge during the first 30 minutes.
Okay. That's not like 1/6. What is that? No.
That's like one third.
Okay, 1/3. That's true. I do think, especially the first third, I do think that the commentator or the moderator did a better job than the other ones. I think he asked more direct questions and pointed ones. He didn't always follow up, as I wish he would have, but I thought the questions are very substantive, and I think both of them. Donald Trump did better than he has in other debates, in at least the first, maybe even 45 minutes I give him. And then he gets a little bit too drawn in. But I think even toward the end, there were questions where he held his own. He didn't just capitulate to what the media was trying to do or what the left was trying to make him say. So I was overall pleased.
Yeah, I don't think we're voting for the best debater. We're voting for the person who'll be the best president. And I think he's proved that he's not a great debater. But you do see the sort of the core there, the fighter core, and the instincts. And there were some instincts on display there. And, probably in no greater way than in this question that, of course, everybody is talking about. And I'm just going to go ahead and I know everybody's going to be able to guess what we're going to talk about first. But let's just go ahead and play the bite.
Your running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it.
There is a tradition in this country, in fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country, are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. The FBI conducted a year-long investigation into my emails. They concluded there was no case. He said the FBI was rigged. He lost the Iowa caucus. He lost the Wisconsin primary. He said the Republican primary was rigged against him. Then Trump University gets sued for fraud and racketeering. He claims the court system and the federal judge is rigged against him. There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
Wow, it's even harder to take it in when you're just listening and not watching. Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that was the question that was asked that I think a lot of people were surprised with the answer, Debbie. But really, when you look at the sort of the instincts, as we mentioned earlier in the program, of a candidate to answer this way, any candidate has the perfect right to challenge the results of an election. We've seen it done in other cases. And especially if there are believed to be irregularities. Now, the rigged election and the rigged system comments, the mantra that's been coming for weeks, has been leading up to this. And so that's why some of us that have been watching shouldn't be surprised in a sense that he answered that way. But I do think that he believes there is voter fraud, that there will be voter irregularities. We encourage people to go and be poll watchers to prevent that. It's not a national or even a Democrat or Republican problem, though, necessarily nationally, because every polling place is controlled by the state and the locality. And so to say, oh, the Democrats overall are rigging the system, you can't really say that.
Well, I would say in light of, and I don't know, only a couple of minutes left in this one segment, but in light of the several stories in the recent weeks in the media, the idea that people are concerned about the integrity of the election process, it's a very legitimate concern. Whether you start with the New York City election commissioner, Alan Shulkin, who acknowledged on a tape that was captured by Project Veritas that the Democrats, in that case, the Democrats routinely drive around busloads of voters and allow them to vote over and over and over in the same election, that Mayor de Blasio is aware of it, that no one minds. And so this is only because it became public. This guy was kicked off the commission, but there's a Project Veritas tape recordings of numerous affiliated directly with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, black money type operatives who have talked about rigging the election for decades, who talk about, so that there's been so much in the media that the idea that Donald Trump is being asked on stage to say, I will accept the outcome of this election with that backdrop, I think he made exactly the right call. He doesn't know what the election outcome will be. It may be an election outcome that he is legitimately going to challenge in court, as the Democrats did in 2000. And they used the expression rigged. They called the Supreme Court rigged in 2000 when the decision was finally made that President Bush was the victor in that election cycle. So Donald Trump, if he had said, oh yes, I promise I'm going to say I will accept the election outcome, he would have been mocked with that if he decided after the election on November 8th to challenge it. You promised you'd accept it. Now you're not. He was very wise. And honestly, the guy isn't always articulate as I would like, but his gut instinct was right. There's something wrong with the idea, given everything that's happening, that I'm supposed to commit that this election outcome is going to be okay. I was actually great with his answer. In fact, I did a posting about it today on AmericaCanWeTalk.org.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will open up the phones a little bit later in the program. We're going to sort of unpack the debate. We want to know, number one, do you think that this debate changed much about what the outcome of the election will be? And also, we'd love to hear your comments on this. Thank you, Debbie, so much for unpacking that. And certainly we've seen in these Veritas videos ways in which either PACs or groups that support Democrats or even Democrat Party operatives themselves have done things to allow for illegal voting. And so those things are out there. They were just made public this week. So you're right. For him to say, yes, I'll accept the results just like that, that would have been dumb. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The editorial drumbeat against guns continues while the evidence mounts that gun deaths are decreasing. 2 articles from last week illustrated these contradictory claims. The editorial board of the New York Times attacked what it called the fantasy that carrying a concealed weapon makes you safer. Meanwhile, Pew Research reported that the nation's overall gun death rate has declined 30% since 1993. The New York Times editorial cited statistics from the Violence Policy Center that since 2007, at least 763 people have been killed in 579 shootings that did not involve self-defense. There's some real problems with these statistics and the analysis. First, these numbers lump suicides with other deaths. Suicides should be considered separately because they have nothing to do with carrying a concealed weapon outside the home. John Lott has actually shown in his research that the suicide rate among concealed carry holders is lower than the general population. Second, the study had to cover a period of 7 years just to get the numbers high enough to sound scary. Remember that there are 12 million Americans that currently have concealed handgun permits. Given that large number of concealed carry holders, it is likely that a few of them over a 7-year period might have accidentally killed an innocent person while trying to bring down a perpetrator. The Pew Research report noted that an increased spotlight on guns does not reflect the overall gun violence trend in the country. Although most Americans think the number of gun crimes has risen, the U.S. gun homicide rate has actually stabilized somewhat in recent years. Actually, the nation's overall gun death rate has declined by 30%, and that percentage includes homicides, suicides, police shootings, and accidental shooting deaths. Sadly, many gun statistics used in editorials are being abused and misused. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From PureFlix, I'm not ashamed. Rachel Scott's life was taken at Columbine High, but her story lives on. Rated PG-13. In theaters October 21st.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter, and I'm in studio with Debbie Georgatos. We are discussing last night's debate, and certainly we'll have some clips from the debate. We also will open the phones maybe in the next segment, but right now we just really have a lot to cover. And one thing I just want to kind of set the tone with, Debbie, is really one of the key, I think, election issues is corruption. And Donald Trump basically said that Hillary Clinton never should have been allowed to run. And so there's a lot of evidence to support that because of, and a lot of it's been coming out lately, although it's been there for a long time. The emails were one of them, but there's a lot more. And, the WikiLeaks emails, especially these ones now that they've gotten from her campaign manager, John Podesta, show a lot of things. And I just want to list a few of the things that are out there about her. To list them all would take the whole show. But the private server, and then the fact that 33,000 emails were deleted, even though they all were subpoenaed. They just unilaterally determined that some of them were not relevant and deleted them. This incestuous relationship between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, favors done for big donors to the Clinton Foundation. It was almost a seamless relationship between the two staffers working for both. And then staffers trying to evade really the law in many ways. Mrs. Clinton's, the former First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State Clinton, having her lawyer, who was definitely under scrutiny, but also her lawyer getting immunity too, and being with her when she was questioned. the Obama administration keeping her informed about developments in the FBI case, working sort of as an arm of her campaign. And then viewing the idea that we've seen in some of these emails that the campaign views voters as stupid, religious voters as backwards, and especially concerning things like gender relations. These are just a few of them. I mean, there's so many more, but the case is just being built for not only corruption, but sort of a tyrannical attitude toward the American people.
I agree with everything you just said. Yeah, it is really an amazing thing too. That's one point I made last week on my show, and probably will again, is there are so many revelations from WikiLeaks, but I think the overwhelming one is there's a sense that of a ruling class elite mentality that is just, it is the basis of how Hillary Clinton views what she hopes is her impending presidency, and also just the role of government generally is to treat American people like pawns and move them around the board. I think the particular comments that were made about Catholic Americans who were just, what really spoke up to me is the notion that they don't see spiritual truth as mattering or as being a real thing. It's just something that you move around, because Catholics have had beliefs relating to marriage and life since the inception of their church, and certainly in modern day America, they've been stalwart defenders on life and marriage, and they're spoken of as they are just people who used to root for the Cowboys, but we can make them into, fans of the Raiders. I mean, we
need like a Catholic Spring.
Yes, exactly what they said. We need a Catholic Spring. It was just a failure to actually recognize how deeply people hold religious beliefs, because they see them as actual spiritual truth, and so they can just be moved around to accommodate the political desires of the Democrat Party. I think that was just a great example of that arrogance and the complicity between the Department of Justice, the FBI, the State Department, the White House, Hillary. It is just that stuff too. You can get down in the weeds a lot and lose sight of what I think is a really big point about it, which is the way you perpetuate order and the rule of law and a structured, free country. You have to have the institutions of power committed to following whatever it is their assigned task is. They can't be political. They can't be saying, well, we don't prosecute you because the group that you are a member of is now our favorite group, so you don't get prosecuted. You can't get exempted from coverage of the laws because you're famous or powerful. We count on those things as bedrock ideas of the rule of law, and they are just completely obliterated by this woman, Hillary Clinton, and by her candidacy.
And to that end, and because of that fact, we have posted an article by Mark Stein. It was actually written before the debate, just ahead of the debate. It was published, called Laws for the Little People. And you can go to pointofview.net and check that out. I recommend you do. It's comprehensive with regard to this idea of corruption. Well, let's go to the debate now, Debbie. And it was interesting to me, and I did agree with you that Chris Wallace did a good job for the most part. I mean, it was definitely the best job of moderation in this campaign cycle. Let's go to the first answer, because they were asked immediately about the Supreme Court. Let's go to that.
We need a Supreme Court that, in my opinion, is going to uphold the Second Amendment and all amendments, but the Second Amendment, which is under absolute siege. I believe if my opponent should win this race, which I truly don't think will happen, we will have a Second Amendment which will be a very, very small replica of what it is right now. But I feel that it's absolutely important that we uphold, because of the fact that it is under such trauma. I feel that the justices that I am going to appoint, and I've named 20 of them, the justices that I'm going to appoint will be pro-life. They will have a conservative bent. They will be protecting the Second Amendment. They are great scholars in all cases, and they're people of tremendous respect. They will interpret the Constitution the way the founders wanted it interpreted, and I believe that's very, very important. I don't think we should have justices appointed that decide what they want to hear. It's all about the Constitution and so important, the Constitution the way it was meant to be.
Well, there's a lot there, and Hillary Clinton had her own ideas. It was an opposite justice, really, somebody very relevant that would basically have liberal ideas and interpret things with a liberal bent. And at least he was able to say something about constitutionalism, strict constitutionalism, and interpreting the Constitution as the founders meant it to be interpreted. That's really what we want in a court. We don't want them to be political. But usually when they interpret the Constitution as it was meant to be, you usually get the conservative interpretation. I think the number one, probably pretty good answer he gave about guns was there. And I will mention to you, posted something to help people understand the Heller Supreme Court decision, because Hillary Clinton made a claim about that. So I just want to, we'll unpack that a little bit more. But Debbie, what did you think of that answer from Donald Trump?
You know, it was interesting. The question he was asked, or they were both asked, was there are varying views about what the Supreme Court's job is in terms of the Constitution. Should they be following the Constitution in its wording, or should they have a more malleable, modern view of the Constitution? And so what I thought was interesting is I'm pretty sure Hillary never said the word Constitution in her answer, because I was listening for it. She talked about policy and they should do nice things for poor people. They do what I like. I thought Donald Trump was, you know, it's interesting again because he's not a lawyer. He's not an experienced politician. He's not an experienced public speaker on the subject of politics. So he just kind of has that everyman tone sometimes. And I think he had that in this. He basically is saying the Constitution matters, and it matters if the judges follow it. So I thought, you know, given where he's come from, I think, maybe Ted Cruz could have had a more elaborate constitutional answer, but Donald Trump, he honed in on, at least in the Second Amendment, exactly what you'd want him to say, and the Heller decision, I guess we'll get to it in a moment, the Heller decision, I was really, for a lawyer, for Hillary as a lawyer to say what she said about Heller is a flat out dishonesty. But we'll get to that in a minute.
She said that it was about toddlers. What it was about was whether a 66-year-old police officer had the right to keep a gun at home. Very restrictive gun laws in D.C. And the First Amendment was strengthened. I don't know if you could say strengthened. It was upheld. It was clarified in that decision. It was a wonderful decision. And I do want to mention that I posted an explanation of that at pointofview.net so it could help you, because I think this might be an area for discussion.
The quickest thing on the Heller decision, there have been arguments by the American left for 100 years that the Second Amendment doesn't really refer to the right of an individual citizen, a private citizen, to keep and bear arms, that the left would argue that the Second Amendment meant it was something more to do with militia. The Heller decision by the Supreme Court, the entire overwhelming purpose of that decision was to restate and to spell out the Second Amendment actually means what it says. It refers to the right of an individual citizen to keep and bear arms. It's a seminal decision in the area of Second Amendment. For her to belittle it like that is utterly dishonest, and she knows better.
The word toddler didn't even appear in oral arguments, and doesn't appear in the opinion. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just want to inform you of that fact in case you weren't aware. You can go to pointofview.net. I recommend you do, and check that out. Also, the Mark Stein article. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to need a lot of good, simple talking points and arguments. So we want to help you with that. Again, also, we ask that you would help us to continue broadcasting Point of View and pay our bills. The donate button is there at pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Imagine it's January 2021. The president elected in 2016 has served 4 years. Tell me, what does the Supreme Court look like with maybe 2, 3, even 4 justices named by this next resident of the Oval Office? Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? Depending on the results in November, 4 years from now will look very different, and together we can influence those outcomes. We need each other. Together we are the Truth Team, and together we can honor Christ as we exercise our stewardship as believers and citizens. One way to make a difference is to visit pointofview.net and support the Truth Team, pointofview.net. Or give when you call 1-800-347-5151. The nation is so divided, we must be united. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
Unpacking the debate, let's open the phones. 800-351-1212. We will take your calls. And really my question is, did the debate last night move the goal? Did it move people's opinions? And also, secondarily, I guess we could take opinions on this. It's amazing. Debbie and I actually agree on this because I don't think a lot of people really looked into it deeply enough to think about his answer, about accepting the results. You know, here we've made a case, and he's made a big case about voter fraud and unreliability and also collusion with the media and the Democrats. And so why would you accept or at least signal beforehand that you were going to accept the election results? So we want your comments on that too.
On that subject, I think it may turn for some people on what they think Donald Trump meant by not accepting the results. If you heard that to mean he may actually start to organize a coup, overthrow the government, bring military forces, then of course that's absurd. But I don't think he didn't say, and in my view, even intend anything like that. He was reserving his right to challenge the legitimacy of the outcome, which is, of course, is his right. But I think that he was wise not to get trapped into the agreement that could be played back over and over by the media. Well, you said back at that debate, and now you're trying to say this. I think he would, and I think again, it's that gut instinct. He knows you don't agree to that, especially in light of what's come to America's attention in the last few weeks.
We had the opportunity to hear the candidates spar on abortion, and let's go to that soundbite now.
If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me. Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month on the final day. And that's not acceptable.
Well, that is not what happens in these cases. And using that kind of scare rhetoric is just terribly unfortunate. You should meet with some of the women that I've met with, women I've known over the course of my life. This is one of the worst possible choices that any woman and her family has to make. And I do not believe the government should be making it. You know, I've had the great honor of traveling across the world on behalf of our country. I've been to countries where governments either forced women to have abortions like they used to do in China, or forced women to bear children like they used to do in Romania. And I can tell you the government has no business in the decisions that women make with their families in accordance with their faith, with medical advice, and I will stand up for that right.
Well, we know where she stands, Debbie, but I will say that Donald Trump did tell the truth about what is done in a late-term abortion. And, you know, the partial birth abortion where the baby is killed basically in the birth canal, that is illegal. The Supreme Court upheld Congress's law that was passed and signed that would be illegal. But there's another late-term abortion called the D&E abortion, dilation and extract, I think is what it stands for. Anyway, the baby is ripped apart, which is exactly what Donald Trump said, and then removed, and it can be done as late as you want, and it's still legal.
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing. I think Donald Trump did do a good job as far as it went on that point. But, you know, I would love to begin to question the legitimacy of the idea that the entire, the future of the baby's health and life, that the only player who has a legal response or legal right to weigh in on that is the mother. And by that I mean, if you gave birth to the baby and 30 seconds later decided for whatever reason you had, I wish I hadn't had this baby, and then you in any way, I mean, using any means, killed the baby, then it would be murder. Then we all agree the state has a role. The state can step in and say, you can't do that because this was a separate life. Well, when the baby's viable inside the mom, I mean, this isn't the only reason to argue in favor of protections of the unborn, but when a baby's viable, the state does have a legitimate right to pass laws about that. And I wish there had been more of that discussion of, you know, when I mean, I know these are difficult decisions, and Hillary Clinton is right. I'm sure that there are difficult decisions people make, but the state has some right right to be involved in that decision when it is a viable baby that is, as you're describing, it's just a horrific picture, but being torn apart in the womb because of the mother's decision.
Yeah, she doesn't like, she was very clear about not liking states' limitations and restrictions on abortions. She was very clear in thinking that those were a negative thing. I think they're a positive thing.
Yeah, so Texas is proudly the place where we passed a law that had a lot more restrictions. In the case of Texas, it was the idea of trying to make these abortion clinics truly provide quality health care, similar or being on par with the health care you'd provide for outpatient surgery centers of other kinds. I mean, they were really very pragmatic, very practical, and these were just, there is a sense on the American left that anything that even might remotely impact women's decision to go forward with bearing a child versus having an abortion, that is just enemy number one.
Ever since Roe versus Wade was decided, we've had these battles over either restricting abortion or who can get an abortion, who can't. So this debate went in the end, in the abortion section of the debate, it went to Roe versus Wade itself. Let's go to that.
To Trump, you're pro-life, but I want to ask you specifically, do you want the court, including the justices that you will name, to overturn Roe v. Wade, which includes, in fact, states a woman's right to abortion?
Well, if that would happen, because I am pro-life and I will be appointing pro-life judges, I would think that will go back to the individual states.
But I'm asking you specifically, would you
If they overturned it, it'll go back to the states.
But what I'm asking you, sir, is do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I strongly support Roe v. Wade, which guarantees a constitutional right to a woman to make the most intimate, most difficult in many cases decisions about her health care that one can imagine. And in this case, it's not only about Roe v. Wade. It is about what's happening right now in America. So many states are putting very stringent regulations on women that block them from exercising that choice, to the extent that they are defunding Planned Parenthood, which, of course, provides all kinds of cancer screenings and other benefits for women in our country. Donald has said he's in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood. He even supported shutting the government down to defund Planned Parenthood. I will defend Planned Parenthood. I will defend Roe v. Wade, and I will defend women's rights to make their own health care decisions. And we have come too far to have that turned back now. And indeed, he said women should be punished, that there should be some form of punishment for women who obtain abortions. And I could just not be more opposed to that kind of thinking.
Well, when we said this was a debate that sort of clarified the issues, these answers did, didn't they?
They did. I actually appreciated that about this debate, that at least you can lay out, all name calling aside, you can lay out 2 different positions. I do wish that Donald Trump had used slightly different language describing the justices he would choose, because I do think it's a wonderful thing to be a conservative and pro-life judge. What you're really talking about is a pro-constitutional judge, a judge that will say, I will limit my decisions to the Constitution and enforcing it as written. Roe versus Wade, whether you do or do not happen to support the idea of abortion, the legality of abortion, created a right out of whole cloth that's not in the Constitution. It took to be precise, Roe versus Wade was based on combining this right to privacy, which actually the Constitution doesn't say that. That was an assumed or a penumbral right. It was kind of the right to privacy, and this which they developed into a right for a woman to have an abortion, which just simply doesn't flow from the logic of the Constitution. So I think what Trump should have said is, I want pro-constitutional judges. I'm going to guess that they're not going to find a magical right to an abortion in the Constitution. So it doesn't mean we outlaw abortion. It means we leave that as a state law issue for the states, which he came out the right outcome. I wish he'd said it differently.
Yeah, and he's usually sort of simple in the way he states some of these issues. He wanted us to know that he will appoint pro-life judges. We are going to take your calls after the break. We don't really have time before the break, but the number is 800-351-1212. I did appreciate that Chris Wallace started with the social issues so they didn't get left out in the interest of time. Next up, they talked about the border wall, deportation, and basically illegal immigration all the way around, so we can get a sort of a context of that. But during the break, why don't you go to pointofview.net? You can see Debbie there and check out her bio and go to her website. She has actually blogged on reactions to various parts of this debate, and I think you would find it very interesting to just be able to read that. She's certainly going to talk about it here with us, but it's another resource for you, ladies and gentlemen. As we move into these final weeks before the election, there could be a lot of people that haven't voted. Some people are just waiting. They don't really want to vote yet because they're not sure what's going to happen. So take advantage of that time to speak with them. We can give you some resources at pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Gurpreet Kurna, a practicing Sikh, applied for a position as a sales associate with a car dealership in Little Falls, New Jersey. Kurna's religion requires that he wear a beard, uncut hair, and a turban. Kurna was qualified for the position, but the dealership had a strict dress code that left him in a predicament. If he wanted the job, Kurna was going to have to shave his beard and violate his religious beliefs. Kurna kept his beard, and the car dealership denied him the job. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission sued the car dealer on Kurna's behalf, and in addition to obtaining $50,000 in monetary relief for Kurna, it forced the dealership to provide anti-discrimination training to its employees, post a notice about the resolution of the lawsuit at the car dealership, and force them to appoint an employee who would make sure the dealership never again engaged in such religious discrimination. That's a good outcome, and hopefully the dealership learns that it is better to respect the religious beliefs of its employees than to force them to violate their conscience. But put yourself in Kurna's shoes. What would you do? Maybe your religion doesn't call for you to change your appearance, but would you quietly compromise your beliefs in order to keep your job? If you were denied a position because of your religious beliefs, how would you respond? To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're taking your calls, 800-351-1212, reaction to the debate. Let's go to Florida and speak with Phil. Phil, you're on Point of View. Thanks for calling in. Hi, Phil.
Yes, good. Thank you for taking my call. I was just listening to Hillary, telling whose voice she is going to be for Roe v. Wade and all those different things. I'm wondering who's going to be the voice of the child that's, let's say, that's held in the womb, that's ready to be born, and how they get around that. They say that they always talk about the mother, her life may be. But that's not the case most of the time. It has nothing to do with the life of the mother. And if it does, we all agree that, when it comes down to a situation like that, we'd all agree that the mother's life should be protected. But
she made it sound like the opposite, though. I thought her answer made it sound like that the life of the mother was not being considered at all, which is totally untrue.
But let me make this statement. Let's imagine, we've seen those videos of ISIS cutting off the head of those people and sending that video around the world, and how barbaric that is. Let me tell you, when a baby is ready to be born, and the doctor, with no conscience undoubtedly, takes a pair of scissors or something and sticks it in the head or the brain of that baby, and that baby feeling the pain and crying out. Can we just imagine the cry gets smaller and smaller and smaller till a third life left? Barbaric. Yeah. And, these Republicans, they claims to be conservative. I heard one on Fox News today, Steve Hayes. They talked about why Trump didn't say he would go along with the decision of the people. Not one time did I hear him or many of the others talk about Hillary's ideas on partial birth abortion, this barbaric act, which most Democrats disagree, and independents and others. So I think you ought to just sign up with Hillary and the Democrats and not deceive us to think they're Republicans.
Phil, thank you so much for your call. Yeah, it surprises me that, even the one big network that we think can be conservative, they actually picked up so strongly on the Trump refusal to say that he would unquestioningly accept the results of the election. They picked up on that just the way everybody else did. They didn't differentiate themselves in any kind of analysis on that at all. And so maybe I'm not surprised, but it's too bad. And it's also true that they don't really talk much about the social issues that are very important to us. We led with them today, and that was a great comment by Phil, wasn't it?
Oh, it certainly was. I actually think that's because of the ISIS beheadings are so much in the news. To make that analogy, it really kind of resonates. I mean, you hear Democrats all stand back aghast, of course, about the beheadings by radical Islamists, but somehow beheading an unborn baby doesn't seem to bother them as much. That's a great analogy. On the thing about whether Donald Trump would agree to accept the outcome of this election. I know we have to get to the next callers, but there are just so many headlines out to urge your listeners or our listeners to go and read some of them. But they had Hillary Clinton in 2002, still refusing to acknowledge President Bush's legitimacy of his election, still essentially calling election rigged, saying Bush was selected, not elected. You have just statement after statement by liberals in the year 2000 and after, undermining President Bush's presidency, but yet they're saying Donald Trump can't even retain the right to challenge the outcome of an election. Hypocrisy gone wild.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the phones to Paula in Mississippi. Hi, Paula. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. And my radio letters are WPAE and KPAE. I couldn't remember when the lady was talking to me.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting us know.
My comment was, I didn't catch the debate, but I knew y'all would be talking about it, so I tuned in. And the blip that you played with Hillary saying it would be the worst decision, talking about abortion, it would be the worst decision a family could make. I heard later on she said difficult and hard, but initially she said it was the worst decision a family. She
unwittingly spoke the truth.
Yes. And then she used the word family, when the whole time she's preaching a woman. Let the family make the decision. Let the father be involved, that kind of thing. That was my comment. Now, something that came to mind after I talked to the lady that talked to me, I keep hearing the advertisement that they're going to get together and talk again, but this time they're going to make fun of each other and themselves. How appropriate is that?
I haven't heard about that.
I don't know where it's going to happen, but it was advertised that they do this somewhere, and then Hillary, that they've done it, sounds like, in the past. And I was going to Google it when I got home to see what was going on, because I always check
I have no
everything.
idea. It sounds like Saturday Night Live or something.
Yes, exactly.
But that would be actors.
Yeah, I think it's going to be actually Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So I was going to see what your take was on that. So I'll just wait and see if you find out something.
I say let's leave it. We're done. We're done with this.
Okay. Thank you much, and I appreciate y'all being there.
Thank you so much for your call, Debbie. I would rather hear the Trump's children, Kellyanne Conway and some of the others, Mike Pence. I'd rather hear them talk right now. And, Donald Trump makes speeches, and let's just move along toward the election.
Yep, I've never been that entertained by any of the Saturday Night Live things, because I think the issues are too serious, and I know people say, oh, it's a light little break, get a break from the seriousness, but the issues are serious. And even when we have serious political debates, we quite often have questions unanswered. We just don't get enough of the truth laid out in front of us. And so I'm just not entertained by that stuff.
Yeah, I will say that a lot of the comedy programs, when you think about them over the years, some people in certain generation get their news from that. In a way, and they get their opinions from it, so it's pretty scary. Let's take another call before the break. Diane is in Arizona. Diane, thank you for calling.
Yes, my husband made this observation last night when we were watching the debates, that he just found it so interesting that Hillary is so concerned about all of these little toddlers who are being killed by accidentally playing with handguns, and if one is killed, it is tragic. And yet she has no qualms about killing a child with, delivering the baby feet first and then jabbing scissors into the base of the skull and evacuating the brains. And he thought, how can she be so schizophrenic? And that was just an observation that we made early on in the debate there.
She also said, and she always says, that, her life has been dedicated to children. And it just, whenever I hear that, I go to, what about the child in the womb?
Yeah, which children, is she referring to? I don't know. I guess the ones that aren't in her basket of deplorables. So
perhaps.
Yes. So that was my comment, and I thank you for all you do. I'm a regular supporter, and keep it up.
Thank you, Diane.
It is an astonishing thing. Those kind of those two comparisons we heard recently from the past two callers. ISIS beheading. And then abortions, very similar, beheading essentially the baby, or what this most recent caller said. There was just, I think, some cultural honesty that, the left would have a hard time selling their views on abortion, especially late-term abortion, if they had to describe in more graphic terms what they support. So they found these really comfortable euphemisms, almost folksy, almost friendly, and they are another form of deception. They're just deplorable. And that's deplorable.
We will continue our debate coverage after this break. I'm also want to mention we're going to do a story about the company, old corporation Proctor and Gamble, actually making sort of a pro-family decision with regard to all this pressure to follow along with the transgender LGBT agenda. There's some good news on that front. We will talk to Justin Danhof of the National Center for Public Policy about that.
Why does Kirby Anderson do what he does? Because he believes in God's ability to use you to make a difference.
There's a real need for us to articulate a responsible biblical perspective and to give people an understanding of what is happening in the world, and in addition to educating them, to then empower them to go out and make a difference for Christ.
Together we can push back the growing darkness. It's not going to be easy. But by God's grace, it is happening, one person, one community at a time. Join us in this mission. Become a monthly partner. $1 a day, $30 a month will make a huge difference. Or perhaps you can do $100 a month. We need partners of all sizes. We need you. Give today online at pointofview.net. At the top of the page, next to the Donate Now button, click on Become a Monthly Partner. Pointofview.net. Mail your donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, or call 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Full bank of phones, people wanting to talk about the debates. Debate reaction is what we're doing right now here on Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter, and Debbie Georgatos is my guest, co-host in studio. And let's talk about immigration. That's been something Donald Trump has been really one of his signature issues. So let's go to the first sound bite. This was, of course, moderator asking the question, but I don't think we have his question in the bite. So let's just go right to their answers.
I have been for border security for years. I voted for border security in the United States Senate. And my comprehensive immigration reform plan, of course, includes border security. But I want to put our resources where I think they're most needed, getting rid of any violent person, anybody who should be deported, we should deport them. When it comes to the wall that Donald talks about building, he went to Mexico, he had a meeting with the Mexican president, didn't even raise it, he choked, and then got into a Twitter war because the Mexican president said, we're not paying for that wall. So I think we are both a nation of immigrants and we are a nation of laws, and that we can act accordingly. And that's why I'm introducing comprehensive immigration reform within the first 100 days with a path to citizenship.
First of all, I had a very good meeting with the president of Mexico. Very nice man. We will be doing very much better with Mexico on trade deals, believe me. The NAFTA deal signed by her husband is one of the worst deals ever made of any kind, signed by anybody. It's a disaster. Hillary Clinton wanted the wall. Hillary Clinton fought for the wall in 2006 or thereabouts. Now, she never gets anything done, so naturally the wall wasn't built. But Hillary Clinton wanted the wall.
Well,
we are a country of laws. And by the way,
I'd like to hear from. I'd like to hear from Secretary Clinton.
I voted for border security, and there are some limited places where that was appropriate. There also is necessarily going to be new technology and how best to deploy that. But it is clear when you look at what Donald has been proposing. He started his campaign bashing immigrants, calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals and drug dealers, that he has a very different view about what we should do to deal with immigrants.
Well, he does have a different view, and Hillary Clinton's view is well articulated, but she doesn't mention, she calls it comprehensive immigration reform, but it's really not that. It's really granting amnesty to people who have broken the law. And, there was one writer who I read this week that talked about maybe the best thing to do is just to do nothing. Don't pass a law that just invites more people to come in illegally. Deal with what you've got. Let it work itself out. It seems to be doing that. And then go forward from there. Deportation was talked about, and Hillary Clinton in her remarks said that families shouldn't be ripped apart. And, it's interesting to look at her willingness to rip apart a fetus in the womb, but not a family who's come across the border illegally.
This is the day of amazing analogies. That's another one, like the other two we talked about in the last segment. You just can't. And it's an important thing to do, I think, because otherwise you just have the euphemistic language of the left about abortion and it's a woman's right to choose, and it's very dangerous and to interfere with that. And it's a precious personal decision and all that. You lose sight of what they're really talking about. So these analogies help with that. And on the border and the wall, I love that Donald Trump pointed out she has voted for a wall. and honestly, to have any serious attempt at border security, you have to have at least some portions of the border protected by a wall. So there's, and we can go off in many directions, but I think most Americans are with the idea we have to have better border security, and you can't sit in Hillary Clinton's seat after 7+ years of Obama, where it just extremely lacks border security, and claim that it's one of your goals. I do want to talk about her immigration thing, but I know you want to go to the call. So
let's take a call on that issue. Let's go to Dennis in Georgia, listening in on GNN. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a partner with you, and I love your show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a truck driver, and I actually just want to talk a little bit about the immigration and Donald Trump being concerned with, as I am, voter fraud. All the illegal, I'm not going to be politically correct and say undocumented people. I'm going to say illegal aliens in this country because of Obama. Get the motor voter registration rule, where they can go to DMV and get a license. They will present that license and vote, and they are illegal in this country and have no business voting. And I don't want to sound heartless, because I understand why those people leave their countries. I've seen pictures of Aleppo, of Syria. I've seen the camps those people live in, and my heart goes out to them. But I got to tell you, I'm a truck driver, and I drive coast to coast, and what's really heartbreaking to me is when I see American families living on the street with small babies and nothing to eat. That is truly heartbreaking to me.
Dennis, thank you. You've made like 6-7 good points. We appreciate your call. And Debbie, this issue of immigration, it was a heartfelt issue at the beginning of the Trump campaign. It fueled his rise. I'm a little surprised he doesn't have like a little more depth of answers by this point. But I thought Dennis did a great job.
I thought he sure did too. I like your point a moment ago too, Penna, about the idea of that we have to be. Actually, let me jump and say the other thing, because I know I'm going to talk too long. We want to take more callers. I think in this whole immigration thing, there are a lot of things you can do that would avoid the big roundup that's pictured. And those kind of things, if you just reduce to eliminate access to government programs, you enforce the idea that only Americans who have the right to work are permitted to work. I think Hillary on her immigration plan, and when she uses comprehensive immigration reform, you're exactly right, Penna. What she means is amnesty. She means legalizing the whatever it is, 11 to 20 million people here now. That's what she means, and that is a pure, crass political calculation by Hillary and the Democrats that those people will be majority Democrat voters. This is why they want them. It's not compassion or any other thing. It's pure, simple, raw calculation that they can increase the Democrat voter base. And I actually think it's just, Donald Trump made a great point last night. It's terribly unfair to people who actually followed the law and waited in line, waited their turn to become citizens, to say, well, if you broke our law and sneaked in, then you don't have to wait in line. But everybody who's staying at home in their respective countries, you get pushed to the end of the line. It is grossly unfair.
Yeah, and I think the couple of the lines that Donald Trump has are brilliant. Like, we don't have a country anymore.
Yes.
I mean, it's in a sense that's over exaggeration, but to put that picture in your mind that, really when you don't have a border and everybody's coming in and they're voting, or they're taking advantage of your system, they're getting benefits. We don't, in a sense, or we're losing it.
Yeah, and one of the biggest ideas tied to the identity of America, one of my main themes of my radio show is this: America is formed and created simply based on an idea. And the lines around this country are the place where we say, here in America, it's different. We actually agree with the ideas in Declaration of Independence. We have rights from God. Government exists to protect them. It exists with the consent of the governed. All the building blocks of America are only available if you embrace the idea of America. So if we don't insist on having a border and insist on anyone coming here and obtaining the right to vote, they have to understand what America is. They have to embrace that idea. It's not racial. It's not ethnic. It's just an idea. That's why our borders matter.
It's something called assimilation.
Amen.
We used to do it a lot better than we do now. We need to get back to it. Go to pointofview.net, check out our website, and help us. That donate button is there. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The editorial drumbeat against guns continues while the evidence mounts that gun deaths are decreasing. 2 articles from last week illustrated these contradictory claims. The editorial board of the New York Times attacked what it called the fantasy that carrying a concealed weapon makes you safer. Meanwhile, Pew Research reported that the nation's overall gun death rate has declined 30% since 1993. The New York Times editorial cited statistics from the Violence Policy Center that since 2007, at least 763 people have been killed in 579 shootings that did not involve self-defense. There's some real problems with these statistics and the analysis. First, these numbers lump suicides with other deaths. Suicide should be considered separately because they have nothing to do with carrying a concealed weapon outside the home. John Lott has actually shown in his research that the suicide rate among concealed carry holders is lower than the general population. Second, the study had to cover a period of 7 years just to get the numbers high enough to sound scary. Remember that there are 12 million Americans that currently have concealed handgun permits. Given that large number of concealed carry holders, it is likely that a few of them over a 7-year period might have accidentally killed an innocent person while trying to bring down a perpetrator. The Pew Research report noted that an increased spotlight on guns does not reflect the overall gun violence trend in the country. Although most Americans think the number of gun crimes has risen, the U.S. gun homicide rate has actually stabilized somewhat in recent years. Actually, the nation's overall gun death rate has declined by 30%, and that percentage includes homicides, suicides, police shootings, and accidental shooting deaths. Sadly, many gun statistics used in editorials are being abused and misused. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From PureFlix, I'm not ashamed. Rachel Scott's life was taken at Columbine High, but her story lives on. Rated PG-13. In theaters October 21st.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Our callers are really making the show today because they're weighing in with some really good comments and questions. Debbie, we also have some great sound, and I want to thank Andrew Hydock for pulling together the audio because, there was so much, and he picked out these great bites. This one was so telling, and really Chris Wallace did a good job on many of his questions he did here. So let's go to that question about, well, it kind of follows off on immigration and our border. So let's go to that.
Well, if you went on to read the rest of the sentence, I was talking about energy. We trade more energy with our neighbors than we trade with the rest of the world combined. And I do want us to have an electric grid, an energy system that crosses borders. I think that will be a great benefit to us. But you are very clearly quoting from WikiLeaks, and what's really important about WikiLeaks is that the Russian government has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election. So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election, that he rejects Russian espionage against Americans, which he actually encouraged in the past? Those are the questions we need answered. We've never had anything like this happen in any of our elections before.
That was a great pivot off the fact that you want open borders, okay? How did we get onto Putin?
I should have introduced it better, Debbie, because she was asked about a comment at the Hemispheric Common Market about how she supports open borders. She tried to say, well, I support energy open borders.
Yeah, she actually, in plain black and white, said, and you can actually hear the clip from WikiLeaks, that she actually talked about preferring and wanting open borders. And interestingly, because in the same WikiLeaks dump, there was another email where a speech, or another speech of hers that was released, essentially where she acknowledged you have to have a public and a private position. So what she's saying is, publicly I say, oh my gosh, no, of course I want a secure border. And privately, she's telling people that she thinks would like this, that no, I want open borders. And she is, Trump's comment was great. Great pivot is right. She just didn't acknowledge what she did.
All right. And she brought up, she pivoted to Russia. She's always trying to intimate that Trump and Putin are best buddies, that Russia's influencing him and influencing our election. So, Andrew, let's just go to number 6, because that kind of follows along on that. And let's hear what Trump had to say about that.
The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind these hacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else?
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin. I have no idea. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad. Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way. Whether it's Syria, no, you name it, missiles. Take a look at the startup that they signed. The Russians have said, according to many, many reports, I can't believe they allowed us to do this. They create warheads and we can't.
All right, he meant the START treaty.
He did. This was one of my favorite exchanges, though, in the whole debate. I just love that Donald Trump made the point, essentially, that Vladimir Putin has outsmarted Hillary and Barack Obama over and over. I actually think, I don't know, whoever's behind these WikiLeaks released them, and it may be Russia, but I think Putin desperately wants Hillary Clinton to win. He wants her to win because he can push America around, as he has for the last 7.5 years. Hillary is Putin's favorite candidate, regardless of who's pushing these WikiLeaks out.
Yeah, I think that's why she's so strong on trying to make the connection between Trump and Putin.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the economy because... Oh, actually, let's go to the Clinton Foundation because we do have a guest coming on at the bottom of the hour. So it's clip number 10, Andrew, and certainly we've been wishing and waiting for Donald Trump to make some points about the incestuous relationship between the Clinton Foundation, all the money they take in, the favors the State Department did for some of the donors, and a lot more. So let's just go to that.
Everything I did as Secretary of State was in furtherance of our country's interests and our values. The State Department has said that. I think that's been proven. But I am happy. In fact, I'm thrilled to talk about the Clinton Foundation because it is a world-renowned charity, and I am so proud of the work that it does. You know, I could talk for the rest of the debate. I know I don't have the time to do that. But just briefly, the Clinton Foundation made it possible for 11 million people around the world with HIV/AIDS to afford treatment, and that's about half of all the people in the world who are getting treatment. In partnership with the American Health Association, we have made environments in schools healthier for kids,
Secretary
including
Clinton,
healthier
respectfully, this is an open discussion.
Well, it is an open discussion.
I understand, and the specific question went to pay for play. Do you want to talk about that?
But there is no evidence, but there is a lot of evidence about the very good work
and it's a criminal enterprise, and so many people know it. It's a criminal enterprise.
Wow. Well, I will say there's a lot that's been said about how much the Clinton Foundation helped Haiti. And Donald Trump made the point in the debate that he said Haitians hate the Clintons. But really, the Friends of Clintons, many of these contractors, these companies that went in to do the work got rich off this disaster. And the work that's been done, there's been very little real concrete aid. and actually not that much money going to the poor there in Haiti. So this is just one country where they've raised a lot of money and done very little good.
Absolutely. I actually don't recall in the debate when Donald Trump, where he was when he said he was talking to Haitians. Was he speaking of being
Little Haiti in Florida?
In Florida. Okay. Okay. Because those people, wherever they were when he was talking to them, they do know, they have that firsthand knowledge that you can't get from listening to press releases from the Clinton Foundation. You get the on the ground people saying, the aid never got to us. It didn't help us. There was, and this statement I want to quickly refute. Hillary Clinton said last night that the Clinton Foundation, approximately 90% of their donations go directly to help the causes that they advertise for. And there was actually a book out, which I'm sure you talk about in the show, Peter Schweizer's book. It was Clinton Cash. Among the many things he talked about was when you actually look at the tax returns of the Clinton Foundation, essentially 6%. Like that's 6% of the donations to the Clinton Foundation go directly to help people in the causes they claim to be helping. The other 94% in this stew, he says, goes to marketing, management, and travel expenses, all sorts of obscure things. It's very hard to dissect what's the end result of that 94% being spent. So, I mean, there are just wildly different estimates of how much the Clinton Foundation money goes to directly help the poor. But if you ask the Haitians, they'll tell you it doesn't end up helping the actual people in need.
The other part of this is that when Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, she very publicly stated and promised that she would cut all ties to the Clinton Foundation. And there may have been some document in which she did that in writing, but in practice, as we said earlier, there were several employees, including her top aide, Uma Abedin, who were employees of the Clinton Foundation, employees of the State Department, and who were, always used to facilitate favors done for big donors to the Clinton Foundation, and contracts given to them, and just all sorts of
just access,
untoward, just access.
Access to Hillary Clinton. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I won't estimate, but it was an astonishing percentage of people who were able to get a meeting with Hillary Clinton, who weren't, for example, heads of state or people who were, actual elected officials in other countries, but just private citizens able to get access to Hillary Clinton. Or the percent, it was, you greatly increased your odds of getting access and having a meeting with Hillary as Secretary of State if your country or your company gave a large donation to the Clinton Foundation. Pay for play is what they've been characterizing that as in the media. That's exactly what it is.
And it was actually a very good question asked by Chris Wallace. I think he did a good job of dogging it. He never got the answer from her that he was seeking, and, she just never answered it, but it was very obvious that she didn't. So in that sense, I think this particular issue was well handled by Donald Trump, and it probably showed her in a bad light. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pivot for a little bit, and we're going to talk about a new issue. Actually, this is some good news. We wanted to bring you some good news today. It's about a company, Proctor and Gamble, and they've made a good decision when pressured, when shaken down. For once, we can report that company has done that, and we'll do it right after this.
Imagine it's January 2021. The president elected in 2016 has served 4 years. Tell me, what does the Supreme Court look like with maybe 2, 3, even 4 justices named by this next resident of the Oval Office? Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? Depending on the results in November, 4 years from now will look very different, and together we can influence those outcomes. We need each other. Together we are the Truth Team, and together we can honor Christ as we exercise our stewardship as believers and citizens. One way to make a difference is to visit pointofview.net and support the Truth Team, pointofview.net. Or give when you call 1-800-347-5151. The nation is so divided, we must be united. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
It's been our debate coverage throughout the program. We are kind of taking a little step away from that to talk about really some good news, Debbie, and that is that one company, Proctor and Gamble, actually had a shareholders meeting in which they made, I think, a wise financial decision, but also just a great decision for religious liberty. You know, these corporate witch hunts that take place where when states have laws like North Carolina's very famous law right now, which protects safety because it asks that bathrooms be used by people according to their biological gender, not the one they think they are. Also, just laws that protect freedom of conscience or religious freedoms. A lot of companies have come out against these, saying they're discriminatory. Some companies will pull out of states because of it. We've had, for instance, sports organizations pulling out of North Carolina because they've stood so strong on this. Well, Procter and Gamble is not going to be part of that. They've made this decision. And with us to discuss this is Justin Danhof, and he is with the National Center for Public Policy Research and also the director of this center's Free Enterprise Project. He's been looking into a lot of these companies and what they're doing. And this one, Procter and Gamble had a shareholders meeting. I think he went. Justin, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on. It's nice to talk about this issue.
It is. Did you go to the shareholders meeting of Procter and Gamble?
Yeah, I've gone to lots of shareholder meetings on these issues, and Procter and Gamble is the most recent that I attended earlier this month because the issue was up for a vote. It was up for debate as to whether or not Procter and Gamble was going to join with the ranks of those companies such as Apple and Salesforce and Nike, who denigrate religious freedom, who denigrate common sense laws such as North Carolina's HB2 law, and work to oppose such measures. So a group, an activist leftist group known as North Star Asset Management, had managed to get a proposal on the company's proxy statement that was up for a vote at the shareholder meeting. And the proposal was essentially an all-encompassing proposal that Procter and Gamble needs to get on board with these other corporations that are attacking religious liberty, that are attacking freedom of conscience, and attacking, frankly, the constitutional nature of our government. That's what's really going on with North Carolina's HB2 law. And so I went to the shareholder meeting to set the record straight. Much of what North Star was proposing was, frankly, factually incorrect, let alone the fact that let's take a step back. And what role does Procter and Gamble have to play in, if we want to call it the culture wars, or if we want to call it state-level legal battles over freedom of conscience and freedom of religious type issues? None is the answer. Procter and Gamble, or they should have none, I should say. And so I explained to the board of directors, to the investors, to the executive team, what North Star Asset Management really was. They're an activist group. They're not looking out for the best interest of Procter and Gamble. They're not looking out for the best interest of the investors. What they're really doing is trying to co-opt another corporation into their political fold. And so that was the first step. Then was to explain the truth about what these laws are. There was a specific argument from North Star about North Carolina's HB2 law that you had referenced. And so, I wanted to set the record straight about what that law really is about, what the legal battle is right now between the Department of Justice in North Carolina, and we can get into that a little more later if you'd like, and other freedom of conscience laws such as that in Tennessee and Mississippi with a religious issue on the...
What was the law in Tennessee that was being discussed?
Yeah, so that one was more of a freedom of conscience type law that essentially says that if a psychologist feels that a different professional would be better to treat an individual because it would violate a freedom of conscience issue, that they should be able to refer that patient, rather than be forced to treat a patient on an issue such as an LGBT issue, for example, that they think that there's another counselor that would be better fit. And so, of course, the left-wing activist groups such as North Star say that this is bigotry and discrimination. Apparently, they think that pro-LGBT counselors can't have deeply held views. I guess that's what they're saying. So, I pointed out the fact that, they're just wrong on the law here.
Justin, I call this a shakedown. I think the Human Rights Campaign and a lot of these pro-LGBT rights, quote-unquote, groups go to these companies and they tell them that they really have to toe this line or they're going to be subject to a lot of bad publicity and other things. And it sounds like Procter and Gamble considered bowing to that, but they decided not to.
Yeah, in the end, after I was able to give my presentation, the shareholders overwhelmingly rejected the proposal. But why this is so important, and that's a great victory in and of itself. I don't want to diminish the victory. Yes, Procter and Gamble, stayed neutral in these debates for now. But not always. Procter and Gamble has bent to the will of leftist activists in the past on different issues. And it's a shakedown. But some of these companies only need, a tiny bit of pressure to be shaken down, so to speak. When you talk about
they need the truth spoken to them. That's why I'm glad you go to these.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of times these companies, instead of allowing the shareholder vote on these issues, they'll just give the left what they want and hope the left will go away. And part of my message to corporate America is, how well is that strategy really working for you? It's not working very well because all it does is tells a company or tells the activist, hey, look, we got, Nike to do this over here. They'll probably do this other thing next year. Or they'll do, X, Y, and Z because they did A, B, and C that we asked. And so it puts a bigger target on your back if you bend to the will of these activists. And that's another message that I try and bring. I try and explain who these guys are and what will happen if you give in to them. And so that's a message that I try and bring. But the other concerning thing is a lot of these companies are being shaken down by their own peers. And what I mean by that is there are some, activist CEOs at very high-level corporations, such as Tim Cook at Apple, such as Mark Beinoff at Salesforce, that any time one of these state-level laws comes up for debate, they are out there and they're actually on the horn to their, fellow executives and trying to get them to, sign up for this, that, or the other thing. What we saw in North Carolina is very disturbing. The Department of Justice is suing North Carolina over the HB2 law, right? Well, in my legal opinion, their lawsuit is well outside the bounds of the Constitution. It violates our separation of powers. And what it essentially boils down to when you get through all the legal nitty-gritty is the Department of Justice is asking a federal judge for the ability to rewrite laws. And we have 68 major American corporations that signed an amicus brief supporting that position. Now,
I'm sorry, supporting which side?
Incredible.
68 companies supported which side?
The Department of Justice.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's shocking. It's sickening, and it's also short-sighted because whether or not a leader of a certain corporation, and I've spoken at two of the meetings of these, Nike and Red Hat, whether or not they agree or disagree with HB2 should be beside the point. They're actually standing for the proposition that the Department of Justice should be able to rewrite federal law. And, so say they dislike HB2, okay, fine, whatever, I think they're wrong, but, that they hold that view. Well, guess what? If you give the DOJ the ability to rewrite the law here, they can rewrite it anywhere. Maybe they'll rewrite a tax law that harms your corporation in 5 years from now. Or maybe they'll rewrite a trade law that, harms you and benefits your competitors. So they're actually standing up for a proposition that violates the entire separation of powers that our founders put into place. And they're doing it for short-sighted reasons. I call what they're doing headline hunting because they think it's quote-unquote cool and popular to come out against HB2 and call it bigotry and discrimination. And, maybe the Washington Post and the New York Times and MSNBC will write, nice columns and air nice segments about what a great company we are for standing up against discrimination. And so this area of short-sighted headline hunting is something that I, very often combat in the work that I do.
All right, Justin, after the break, I want to ask you about Target because I know you went to their shareholders meeting. Target's been sort of famously opening up its restrooms and changing rooms to people according to their gender identity. We've looked at over the months since there was an actual boycott of Target. We've seen actual problems with their profitability, and a lot of people are saying it's because of that. I have not gone to Target since that whole issue arose because I really felt it was important to make that statement. So we'll ask about Target and more right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Gurpreet Kurna, a practicing Sikh, applied for a position as a sales associate with a car dealership in Little Falls, New Jersey. Kurna's religion requires that he wear a beard, uncut hair, and a turban. Kurna was qualified for the position, but the dealership had a strict dress code that left him in a predicament. If he wanted the job, Kurna was going to have to shave his beard and violate his religious beliefs. Kurna kept his beard, and the car dealership denied him the job. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission sued the car dealer on Kurna's behalf, and in addition to obtaining $50,000 in monetary relief for Kurna, it forced the dealership to provide anti-discrimination training to its employees, post a notice about the resolution of the lawsuit at the car dealership, and forced them to appoint an employee who would make sure the dealership never again engaged in such religious discrimination. That's a good outcome, and hopefully the dealership learns that it is better to respect the religious beliefs of its employees than to force them to violate their conscience. But put yourself in Kerna's shoes. What would you do? Maybe your religion doesn't call for you to change your appearance, but would you quietly compromise your beliefs in order to keep your job? If you were denied a position because of your religious beliefs, how would you respond? To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Well, kudos to Proctor and Gamble for standing up against the PC shakedown. Debbie, Target did not do that. They went a different direction. I've got a piece here that's funny. Target removes scary clown masks for safety reasons, but men are still allowed in women's bathrooms.
Okay, I've not seen that. Well,
Debbie, but you do have some stats on Target's financial picture.
Yes, this may not be the most recent data, but it's talking about Target's decline in business based, and many people are drawing the correlation based on a boycott that started after Target announced that men could indeed use women's bathrooms if they identified as women that day. So second quarter Target earnings fell to $680 million, which was essentially revenue being down 7.2%. And there have been more than 1.4 million consumers have joined and signed on this boycott of this. And actually Target is the nation's second largest discount retailer. We were just talking in the break, Penn and I. We both love Target. It's fun to go there, but I don't go there anymore.
Yeah. Well, Justin, thank you so much for doing this. You know, we don't want to just talk about one company. So if you have others that are doing the right thing, please keep us posted on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Target, it was quite a bizarre scene when I went to their shareholder meeting. That was earlier this year in June out in California. It was right in the height of all of Target. Target, of course, came out with their stance in response to North Carolina. So this is all very much connected. North Carolina comes out with their HB2 law. Target in response says, look at how great and inclusive we are. Anybody can use any restroom. And by the time I attended the shareholder meeting, which was on June 8th, the stock had dropped 18% from the date of the announcement to the date of the shareholder meeting.
Wow.
Now, that's quite a shocking number that can't really be attributed to, the decline in the economy because, we're kind of in a stagnant economy at the moment, not a declining economy. And so I had a two-part question for the CEO. The first one related to those finances. The second one was a little more nuanced because the CEO is a gentleman by the name of Brian Cornell. He strongly has defended his company's stance on this bathroom issue. And he, in fact, went on television, and he basically equated those who disagree with the company's bathroom stance to those folks in the 1960s that didn't like seeing black people in advertisements.
No, brother.
I kid you not. And so my question was very, very simple. I said, Mr. Cornell, is it your position that the millions of Americans who think your bathroom stance is wrong-headed, that all of us are bigots, the moral equivalent of a racist from the 1960s. Is that the company's position? That was my first question. And the second question was, what has been the financial effect of, your decision? And I just pointed out to you, it's been an 18% drop. Well, let me tell you, I left that shareholder meeting, and I've been to many, many dozens of shareholder meetings over the last few years, fighting for liberty and fighting for freedom. I've never left a shareholder meeting feeling as bad as I did leaving that meeting. Let me tell you, Target, if you disagree with their position, they don't want you as an investor. They don't want you as a customer.
Sounds like they don't want you as a customer.
They don't want you anywhere near their facility.
Hey, Justin, I got to let you go.
They do believe you're a bigot.
Thank you so much for going to these meetings, keeping us posted, and please do let us know, the new developments on Target, new developments on P&G, and any other companies. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much. I'll keep you updated.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to play a couple more sound bites for you before the end of the program from the debate. Issues that we think are very important. One was the economy, and they were asked about it. I want you to hear Clinton's answer.
Well, I think when the middle class thrives, America thrives. And so my plan is based on growing the economy, giving middle class families many more opportunities. I want us to have the biggest jobs program since World War II, jobs in infrastructure and advanced manufacturing. I think we can compete with high-wage countries, and I believe we should. New jobs and clean energy, not only to fight climate change, which is a serious problem, but to create new opportunities and new businesses. I want us to do more to help small business. That's where 2/3 of the new jobs are going to come from. I want us to raise the national minimum wage because people who live in poverty should not, who work full-time should not still be in poverty. And I sure do want to make sure women get equal pay for the work we do. So the plan I have, I think, will actually produce greater opportunities. The plan he has will cost us jobs and possibly lead to another great recession.
A lot of middle-class folks might love hearing all those things, but my question always is, how do you pay for it? And if you go on to her answer, she wants to tax the rich, quote-unquote the rich, because they have too much. So you're going to tax the producers, you're going to tax the job creators, and then you're going to expect the middle class to get higher wages, more jobs, and to build infrastructure. How do you do it? How does that work?
Only in the imaginary economic world of the la-la land of liberals. I will tell you just 3 quick things. When Hillary Clinton talks about investing in any people in any group in America, investing in America, and she's talking about taking money away from people who worked hard to earn it and businesses that worked hard to earn it and giving to other people. That's not investing in the private sector means I choose of the dollars we have in our home. Perhaps I want to invest in a company and buy a portion of their shares because I believe in that company. Her investment is a forced decision on Americans. That's number one. Number two, this is a free market economy. Government doesn't create jobs. Doesn't matter how often she claims. Government can't create jobs except by, they don't add value to society's economy. They just take money from one group, give to somebody else. That's not job creation. Hillary can't comprehend this. She's never created a job in her entire life, a real job. And the third one is absolute opposites of each other. We want to support small businesses and raise the minimum wage. Small businesses require employees, and time proven, every time it's tried, we raise minimum wage and the number of jobs available to low-income Americans goes down. You can't help small businesses and raise the minimum wage. You got to choose. And helping small business, if she's going to raise minimum wage, she's going to hurt small business. The thing is, she knows this.
All right, the last point before we have to say goodbye is how come Hillary Clinton gets away with things that other people don't? Let's go to that.
What isn't fictionalized are her emails, where she destroyed 33,000 emails criminally, after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress. What happened to the FBI? I don't know. We have a great general, 4-star general, today, you read it in all the papers, going to potentially serve 5 years in jail for lying to the FBI. One lie. She's lied hundreds of times to the people, to Congress, and to the FBI. He's going to probably go to jail. This is a 4-star general, and she gets away with it, and she can run for the presidency of the United States. That's really what you should be talking about, not fiction where somebody wants fame or where they come out of her crooked campaign.
The American
held
people
to a higher
love that.
standard.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. We as private citizens are held to a higher standard. The person who is running to be the leader of the free world is not held to such a standard. And so that's what we're facing, Debbie, here as we look forward to not only this election, but then what happens afterwards.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the most winning points of the evening, that you just can't have a country where someone, the head of the country, is not held to the rule of law. You don't have America as it was intended to be. And, he may make his points in flamboyant ways, and you wish you could add 3 other subparts and be more substantive. I think he made a great point in that one, and I think it resonated with people.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, at pointofview.net, you can find out more about the Proctor and Gamble wise decision. You can also find out about some commentary on this debate and a lot more. We also ask that you go there and continue to help Point of View. If you've never helped us, it's real easy. There's a donate button up in the upper right-hand corner. It's bright blue. And we would be so appreciative of any help we can get to keep our show going. Tomorrow is our weekend edition. Debbie will be back, and Kirby Anderson will be here. You won't want to miss it.
From Pure Flakes comes I'm Not Ashamed. April 20th, 1999, the worst school shooting in U.S. history at Columbine High School. One victim was Rachel Joy Scott. Her life was taken, but her story lives on.
Jesus gave his life for me, and I'll give my life to him.
I'm Not Ashamed, rated PG-13, in theaters October 21st. More information at I'mNotAshamedFilm.com. Kirby recently wrote about the growing threat to our religious freedom. I hope you read that letter. There are few things more important. Many ministries say 2016 has been tough, very tough. I think a lot of us are down about the mess surrounding this election, but we dare not take our eyes off these issues, and Point of View will not. But we need your help. We really need your help right now to press on. Please visit pointofview.net, click the Donate Now button, or call 800-347-5151, or send a gift to Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.